Are you getting bored of delivering presents from A to B because you can't think of a better way to grind up to that new AMRAM wielding superjet? Well, never fear because I have the solution for you. Today's video sponsor is GE for War Thunder. Basically, it's just this little app that you download and you play some games on it, you do some like little tasks, and you get rewarded with Golden Eagles. Use my referral code NXSWK to get some extra Golden Eagles when you first sign up. It keeps your mind busy and helps shorten the grind. Link is in the description. So it is that time of year again where the entire War Thunder sim community sort of comes together and we will have a big old whinge about how bad sim is and how easy it would be for Gaijin to improve it all just by lifting like one or two fingers or flipping 3 or 4 switches without having any idea about how to make a game or even code anything. This time it all started off when a certain DCS YouTuber started to make content on, you know, War Thunder sim and sort of dip his toes into the game mode a little bit, and it's slowly starting to realize like, wow, this could be a really cool game mode. Actually, the foundation here is amazing. If only they would change this and that, like, and tweak these like few things, we'd actually have a really solid contender for other like sort of combat flight sim sandboxes that are out there. And basically the same things that we've all been thinking as sim players for the last like 5, 6, 7, 8 years or so. Now basically what sparked this off is that this guy contacted a few of the War Thunder sim communities and asked for some like suggestions as to how to improve the game mode, and I think he's basically gonna like pile some together, like create some kind of list and then get in contact with the devs and just try and sort of get something done. And I wish him all the best. We've tried it before, but maybe this time's actually different, and he does have quite a bit of a following. So what I've done is I've asked my community, the Sim Enjoyers Discord, if you guys had any kind of suggestions, and boy, you guys did not disappoint. So what's happened is I've gone through, I've compiled a list of some of the what I think are the most realistic and best suggestions that we could find to sort of send off, and I'm going to go through some of them here in this video. Now, I'm only going to be mentioning things that are specific to sim here, so stuff like bigger maps or whatever, which would affect War Thunder as a whole, obviously. They're not just going to create specific maps for sim, obviously. I'm going to leave out, right? Also, the suggestions that I've chosen here are things that, at least in my mind, obviously, again, I'm not a coder, but in my naive mind here, these are things that shouldn't be too difficult to implement, at least not to the extent that you would kind of have to overhaul the game mode or anything like that. So while we would all love to see playable ships, playable tanks and aircraft all sort of together in one big sim EC match, I don't think it takes a genius to realize that this just isn't realistic, right? It's just not going to happen. But without further ado, let's get into it here. And the first suggestion here that I picked out is replace the spawn cost with the repair cost so sim can benefit from backups like RB and AB. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory, but just in case you didn't know, basically sim has a spawn cost system instead of a repair cost system. So instead of like only having to pay the repair costs once you get shot down, you have to basically pay upfront before you spawn, basically meaning that there's just no way you're ever going to get out of an EC match with any kind of loss, even if you don't die. And I think that's just a bit of a it's a bit of a silly system. I'm not quite sure why they sort of made it this way. Also, it also means that you can't really use any backups for sim, which is obviously a bit of a shame, because as a sim player you do kind of end up accumulating a lot of these backups for different vehicles and stuff, and just not being able to use them in the game mode is a little bit of a shame. So it'd be nice if they changed that. Now, my favourite suggestion out of this whole bunch here, and this would be the only one, if I could choose only one, this would be the one that I actually forward to the devs, and that is to just simply add more maps to the game mode. We've been playing on the same maps here for the past 2 or 3 years. The last 2 that I've gotten added was Sinai and Rocky Canyon about 2 years ago now, and man, it is so frustrating watching these RB guys on stuff like Southern City, Volcano Valley, I think it's called Rocky Pillars, or even the new one, Alpine Meadows, which to be honest with you, just the map looks like it's designed for top tier, right? Like the way the terrain just sort of curves and stuff like that. At the moment in sim for top tier, the only like really viable maps we have with terrain in them are Afghanistan, Vietnam and Spain. 3 maps that have been in the game for God knows how many years, and it's just, while they are good maps, I mean, especially Afghanistan is kind of saving top tier in my opinion right now, but we just kind of we end up just playing the same couple of maps over and over and over again. I mean, a lot of people do play Denmark for some reason, but it's not a very like sort of dynamic experience because it's just flat and there's no real like terrain or cover or anything like that. So you just end up flying towards the dot on your radar forever. Yeah, if we could just get like just a few more maps, right? I don't see what's so difficult to just like plop a few airfields down, a couple of convoy routes on something like Volcano Valley and just, you know, call it a day, put it in the sim. I don't understand what's so difficult about that. But then again, I'm no programmer or whatever, but you know, still. Now the next point here is to just remove the useful action system and replace it with a traditional reward system like in RB. Now, I guess I'll explain what the useful action system is real quick. If you don't know about this, Sim uses a different rewarding system, so it's not on merit. It's not that you get you earn rewards per kill, or depending on how many kills you get or whatever. Essentially, the game is split up into 15-minute segments, and if you have a certain amount of rewards that you can earn within, you know, a 15-minute segment. And if you end up earning any more rewards before the 15 minutes are up, you don't get any more. It's capped, right? So if you say, I don't know, I think it's capped at, let's just say, like 12,000 SL and like 7,000 RP, right, for a set of 15 minutes. If you end up getting 2 kills, you get rewarded those 12,000 SL. If you get any more kills before the 15 minutes are up, they're going to be for nothing, right? Because you've already maxed out your rewards, and then once those 15 minutes are up, you then get to earn again. So you're essentially just capped and held back, and it's like you're just handicapped the whole time, which is really annoying. It's really stupid, and it sort of punishes people that are really good at the game. And it also gives you no incentive to, like, once you've got your two kills, which is generally what you need to max out the score limit, within, let's say, 5 minutes. There's literally no point in playing for the next 10 minutes, right? You might as well just go back and land on the airfield, because if you get shot down in those 10 minutes, you're still going to have to pay the next spawn cost to spawn up, right? So you're essentially just sort of risking it for nothing, right? And that's why this is such a stupid system. And the reason they implemented something like this is because Sim gets sort of abused quite a lot because of just the nature of the game mode. So you get people that start off these custom lobbies, very, very small team sizes, like 2v2s or something like that, on a huge map, and they just like run back and forth between bases and just end up bombing the whole time without really having to encounter like actual players trying to shoot them down, right? So it's a really easy way to grind, essentially, and that's why they sort of cap the rewards, and that's why the rewards in Sim kind of, you know, suck the way they do. Now I have 2 solutions for this problem. And the first one is to just simply reduce the rewards for bombing, right? Why is PvP getting punished if PvP isn't the thing that's actually causing the problem, right? It's the PvE activities that are causing the issues. Now, the second solution I have for this would just be to add a system that scales the rewards for PvE activities depending on how many players are on the enemy team, right? So let's just say you go bomb a base and you have like 2 enemy players on the team, you'll get like, I don't know, 5,000 SL for it, let's just say. However, if you do that same activity where you have like 10 enemy players on the team, obviously increasing the chance that you're going to get found and shot at by actual players, and the reward now scales up to, I don't know, 25,000 SL, right? So you make a substantially more money, but you take a lot more risk playing in these higher populated lobbies. A system like this would still punish those zombies in those low pop lobbies, right? However, it wouldn't punish the people that play in high population lobbies but actually want to do the objectives in order to win the match, right? Now the next point here is just to add some better airfield protection. The AAA and the lower like prop tiers and stuff is kind of alright, but once you get to the roll-ins, especially at top tier, they just don't cut it, right? I can see Gaijin kind of having something like this in the pipeline, and I said I wasn't going to talk about things that, you know, don't only affect Sim. Obviously this would kind of affect RB as well, but Sim definitely has more of a problem with like base camping and stuff than, you know, RB has, because you can respawn in the game mode. So just having, you know, some, I mean, I don't know, even just stuff like Pansirs or Tors or something like that would make a massive difference when it comes to stuff like spawn camping. Another suggestion I really like here is to just always have at least one active ground battle / push point sort of active at any one time, right? There's a lot of times where you'll join a match in your A10 or your SU-25 or something, and there isn't really anything to shoot at. Now, you could go fly all the way to the other side of the map and go take out one of the convoys, but that's kind of, it's not, it's a bit boring. Plus the convoys, especially at the higher tiers, just have like super laser vision AAA powers, and they'll basically gun you down like pretty much instantly if you get anywhere near them. So just to always have a ground battle, a push point, would just ensure that these sort of CAS aircraft would just always have like something to go after, right? Something to do. And by extension, the community talks about this every couple of months, so I have to mention it. But people want helicopters in EC. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been some concerns mentioned by players, in terms of the balance between helicopters and aeroplanes in this game. Something people are worried about is like that KA-50s would just kind of be able to just sit just outside of the runway of like enemy players or whatever, and just sort of shoot at them while they're taking off with the Viking missiles. But then there's also stuff like, there's that Chinese helicopter with the super good air-to-air missiles. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't play enough ground RB to really have like an informed opinion on how the balance would play out between helicopters and jet planes. If I have a feeling it would go in the way of the jet planes, just because I think in the big EC environment, jets just have too much room to play in, right? You could go in for a quick boom and zoom attack, and if the heli doesn't just quite get him in that one pass, right, the jet's just gone again essentially, and the heli's just it's a bit of a sitting duck. So, but I don't think that would be that bad either, because the heli would then have to fly low, fly in little crevices, try to avoid contact, avoid being spotted for as long as possible until it gets to the front line. And if it does get engaged or whatever, call that for cover. Helis can also generally, I have played them a little bit, and you can stay alive in them for quite a while, even if it's feeling like a bit of a one-on-one situation. You might not necessarily get the kill on the jet, but you could definitely stay alive for a while, until like a teammate arrives or something like that. And it was just it would promote teamwork or whatever, and all of that. Like, what you would have to implement though is, like I said with the last suggestion, have a constant stream of ground targets to go after. So having like at least one ground battle active at all times. And then also have, because of some of the size of these maps are actually huge, and it would take ages for helis to sort of traverse them. So have like my suggestion would be to, whenever a push point or a ground battle spawns up, have a heli spawn point or a helipad spawn, I don't know, let's say one grid square behind that push point. Obviously on either side as well for both teams, and then whenever that push point, whenever one side gets defeated on that and a new one spawns up, the helis can then go back, land at the helipad, J out, and then respawn at the next helipad on the other side of the map or whatever. I think that's how I would sort of balance out the travel times. And it doesn't mean that the helis would just be able to take off and immediately go attack the ground units. They would still have to traverse like one big grid square, but this just means that helicopters don't have to fly 20 minutes every time they spawn or whatever, because that would actually get really frustrating, especially with some of the helis only having like a couple of shots, with like some of the payloads that they have. So I think that would be a nice way to sort of balance that out. And it also means that you generally have an idea of where all of the helicopters are on the map, right? They're always going to be around the push points essentially. So if helis do end up being a little bit too powerful, you can just sort of try to avoid that kind of area, or you can specifically fly out, fly low, and go heli hunting or something, right? And sort of have it work out like that. It's also worth mentioning here that helicopters currently in War Thunder aren't at 13.0. I think the KA-50s are like 11.0, 11.3 or something like that. So you wouldn't even face stuff like the F-16C or the Su-27 SMs, stuff with these really good radars or whatever. So they would generally just be like a little bit harder to find. But in general, I think this would be a good change. I think it would give EC a new coat of paint, a new lease of life, and it would also give helicopter players something new to sort of dig into, and another way to just grind the heli tree out, because at the moment it is a little bit, it can be a little bit taxing. I know they did that thing with the tanks or whatever, but for helicopters enjoyers in this game, ground RB I don't think really is it, to be honest. I think EC would just be a much better game mode for helicopters as a whole. Now, as we're talking about air support right now, I think another point that was mentioned was that we need to increase the rewards that we get for destroying AI tanks and AI ground units and stuff like that. Because at the moment, the way it is, sometimes when you destroy like an SPA-8, right, like a little Sedan 25 or something like that, with one of your, let's say, 4 Mavericks on your Harrier or whatever, you only get about like 70 points or something. Like, it's, I'm not sure exactly what the number is, but it's not even like triple digits, right? So when these AI units or these AAA units are so accurate, essentially forcing you to use these like standoff weapons, these smart bombs or whatever, which you only have like a limited amount of on your plane, by the way, only rewarding you with like a couple of points. Yeah, you're not even going to be able to fill up the the useful action reward system for that kind of for that fly out there. So I think that needs to sort of be rebalanced a little bit. Another thing I want to talk about here as well that got suggested is just to add, specifically at top tier, increase the amount of tickets for the match as well. I mean, an EC match has a time limit of 3 hours. The matches are supposed to last between 2 and 3 hours, which at prop tier they kind of do. However, at top tier, most of the time, I think they last about, I don't know, 1.5 hours, I think, would be like the average kind of. On the smaller maps, I mean, you'll be lucky if they last up to an hour as well. So just increasing some of the tickets, I think, would just be a really good thing here. It would mean you could sort of strategize a little bit more, and sort of focus on the objectives, and actually, kind of have that feeling of being in like a big military sandbox kind of thing, where things you do now might matter in like an hour or so, right? Yeah. So another suggestion that came up very frequently, actually, and this wouldn't necessarily be game changing or anything like that, but adding a era appropriate AI would just be kind of nice, right? This isn't really a problem for prop tier or the lower tiers or anything like that, but once you get past, like, let's just say like the F-86 Sabres or the 104s, the AIs kind of stop getting any more advanced. So you have like, actually no, that's not true, I think you have the Harrier as well. But just going to intercept the enemy attackers in your Su-27 and finding out they're just a bunch of like CL-13 Mark IVs just isn't really, like, it just takes you a little bit out of that immersion, I don't know, it'd just be nice to sort of have, instead of a flight of AI sailors, just have like a flight of A-10s or something like that, right, just attacking the ground. Stuff like that would just kind of just make it feel a little bit more realistic, while not really changing the gameplay all that much, but still, it would be nice. Now, we are slowly getting towards the end, but one thing I want to mention before I get to the last point here is that I think there needs to be some sort of tutorial for Sim as well, and the default controls also need to be overhauled. The default mouse and keyboard controls for the full realistic controls that you have to use in Sim, and for lack of a better term, they are just trash. I don't think I even need to say any more about that. I think, yeah, that's like the biggest hurdle. That's one of the biggest hurdles for people to try the game mode, is the control setups. And I think if we just had like an actual a decent default control setup that would actually work and sort of cover all of the basics, then we would, I think a lot more people would sort of give this game mode a try. And by extension to that as well, just add like a maybe it doesn't have to be like an outright tutorial, but maybe just like a little hint system that pops up on screen whenever you're in your first couple of sim matches, like telling you about things like engine torque or propeller torque or something. So when you try and take off in your Focke-Wulf 190 and you just go full throttle, whatever, the aircraft's going to try and start spinning because of the prop torque, and you kind of have to like slowly ease the throttle up and give counter rudder and stuff like that, or apply left brake or whatever. Just stuff like that, just telling players like what's actually going on, because someone who plays Sim for the first time and isn't really that savvy with like with realistic aircraft in video games or whatever, isn't really going to know what's happening. They're just going to press W to go forward or whatever button it is, and they're just going to end up spinning, right? And then also, maybe hints for trim, how trim works, and wingtip stalling, stuff like that, because like tell the player that they're too slow and they're pulling too hard on the stick, or they're pulling too much angle of attack or something like that, and that's what's making the plane spin around or whatever. Just let people know what they're actually doing wrong, right? This is a huge hurdle for people, and I've recommended this game to quite a few people that I know in real life and that have tried it, or at least the simulated game mode. And this is like it's either one of these three things. It's like, why is my plane constantly pulling up? Why am I spinning on the runway, or why am I just falling out of the sky, right? It's just one of those things, and obviously they have me to tell them, but it'd be nice if there was like some kind of hint system. And now the last suggestion here I'm going to talk about is probably the most controversial one, where I'm going to get the most sort of let's say flack for suggesting something like this. Now, there needs to be some kind of way to gain vague information as to the whereabouts of the enemy players, especially at the lower tiers. Like, how many times, I can't tell you how many times I have flown at, I don't know, like 3.0, 4.0 or whatever, and I've just flown around for like almost an entire fuel load, like half an hour, 40 minutes, and I could not find a single person. This is especially common in those lobbies where like everyone's just kind of bombing, right? But it's incredibly frustrating if you just want to get into some action like real quick as well. So I think this is something that could be implemented. You would just sort of, I don't think it should be like a pinpoint system where it's just like it just selects like some random player or everyone on the enemy team and says like calls out their exact location every couple of minutes. I think it should be more like, I don't know, like my idea for this would be to have a call out that shows you the most populated grid square at that moment. So if you have like, I don't know, a team of, let's say, 7 enemy players, but 5 of them are within like the same sort of grid square, then call out, I don't know, let's just say it's the D4 grid square or whatever, just call out like enemy players in D4 and just have that every couple of minutes. And just to spice it up a little bit, you could also link this to something like the surveillance aircraft or some kind of like, I don't know, destructible ground radar installation thing or whatever that just like randomly spawns somewhere. And then not only would that actually give the enemy team an actual incentive to go take that thing out, it would also give the protecting team the incentive to actually protect it as well, right? Because you would lose a significant tactical advantage. Now, these were just some of the like the best suggestions I could find on the Sim Enjoyers Discord, which link in the description by the way if you want to join. But there were obviously like a bunch of other ones as well that kept getting repeated, but I decided to leave them out because it was just things like adding like a refueling tanker somewhere where it's just like, okay, like it would be kind of a cool mechanic, but then how would that even work, right? I mean, you have like, where would you have it, like fly around in the middle of the map at like 20,000 feet or 10,000 feet or whatever, and then you have to sit there for like, I don't know, 5 minutes or however long it takes to refuel the jet, I don't know. You're gonna get shot down, let alone the tanker getting shot down before anyone even gets close to it or whatever. And then if you want to make the argument, well, you can just have it fly around like on your side of the map or whatever. Well, if that's the case, it's going to be flying over your airfield. So what's the point of having a tanker there anyway? So it's just, I don't know. It just seems like it would be so much work to implement a system like this for it to not really be that useful in a sense. Another one that came up quite frequently as well is just to have like some kind of like historical matchmaking or whatever, and I assume they're not talking about BRs but like more like team setups and stuff, because obviously in Sim you don't have markers, and having like Western aircraft or allied aircraft on the Axis side or whatever can get a bit confusing sometimes. But I don't know. I mean, we kind of have this at props, and we also kind of have it at top tier as well. The problem with, like, if you wanted to be really strict about it, you would just have to have, like, basically everyone versus Russia and China, and then you could probably also make an argument that Russia and China wouldn't actually fight side by side or whatever, right? So it wouldn't be a good time, right? Nobody would play the red team. It's bad enough right now as it is anyway, so I don't think this is really like a realistic thing. I think right now it's the best it can be, where we have some blue side jets on the red side. I think just like for balance or whatever. I think the lower tiers it actually works quite well, especially at prop tier. I don't think I think it works fairly well as well. There are a couple of more like sort of team setups that make sense for props as well, where it's just like allies versus Axis, and that's a lot more balanced as well. But for top tier, I think right now it's the most sort of realistic we can make it without just completely killing the game mode. One other thing that's sort of been suggested as well is to essentially split like the tech trees up if they have like vehicles from different nations in them. So like instead of having like Germany as a whole, you have East Germany and West Germany and stuff like that. And the same goes for like premiums, like where Germany has like a P-47 premium or whatever at prop tier. And I just think I can see where the people are coming from, but I don't understand how this is supposed to be implemented like in any kind of realistic way. I mean, the P-47, for instance, is like a premium. So what do you want to do? Do you want to like group up each vehicle like individually on their own separate team or whatever? I mean, if you do that, not only is it going to be needlessly complicated, but it would also lower premium vehicle sales, because who's going to buy a premium P-47 if you can't even play it alongside your Focke-Wulfs or your BF-109s or whatever? It would be another negative to premiums, and Gaijin just won't do that obviously, because they're a business and businesses need to make money, which is totally okay. And when it comes to these like minor nations in tech trees, a lot of the time these minor nations get introduced into tech trees specifically to fill gaps in the BRs. I mean, the best example of this is South Africa in the British tech tree, giving them the Gripen, right? Britain basically doesn't have anything air-to-air, let's just say competent at air-to-air combat until they get the Typhoon. I mean, they have the Tornado right now with AMRAAMs, but yeah, it's a Tornado. So they get given the Gripen through the South African tech tree, and that's kind of like why South Africa got added to that nation. Really, it's also the same kind of story for China as well when they added Taiwan. They got the F-16A MOU, which at the time was top tier, and the only thing really to compete with that was the J-8B, which just wasn't. It's a MiG-21, right? Now Germany's in a similar boat to Britain as well. They don't really have anything competitive until they get the Typhoon. And I know we got the Benelux tree, or let's just say like the Netherlands, added to the French tree, and I think the only reason they actually added it to the French instead of the Germans, which would make a lot more sense, because the Dutch armed forces are pretty much entirely integrated into the German Bundeswehr. So why didn't Germany get it? Well, probably because they're going to get Switzerland whenever we get the F-18 added to the game, and they need the F-18 because they don't get anything else until they get the Typhoon, basically, which is still a couple of patches out, I would guess. Now, I've been yapping for the past 25.5 minutes here, so I'll let you go if you're still watching. If you think I've missed anything, or if you have any of your own suggestions as well, please feel free to put them in the comment section as well. I'd actually love to know what some people come up with here, because it can be quite interesting. Some people do have some interesting ideas about this. If you want to join the conversation on the Discord, I've linked it in the description. Also, don't forget to use my promo code. It's also down there in the description for the GE for Wolf on the rack as well. Look at me advertising stuff like a professional, bro. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you in the next video. Cheers.